Hi, my name is Joyce Zenon Peters, and I'm doing my report or review on The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis, and it's a paper submitted to Professor Andrew Shepherdson for the King's College on April 16, 2016. Prior to arriving at the library to check out my book, I realized that I hadn't given the list much thought. I looked for the books in the order that the titles were printed in our syllabus and selected the first book I found, The Abolition of Man, mainly because of the author, C.S. Lewis. I recognized his name from the movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I haven't seen the movie, but I read reviews and discovered that it is a very popular and successful film. It was also the shortest book, a mere 61 pages. Once I sat down to read the book, I was painfully surprised. I didn't understand a word of what I was reading. The book is a collection of 3 lectures given by Professor Lewis entitled Men Without Chess, The Way, and the Abolition of Man. Because of the title of the last lecture, I thought this was the only one I needed to focus on, but was again surprised after reading it. I realized that reading them in their printed order was the plan, and therefore went back to read from the beginning of the series. I will now provide a history of the life of Clive Stephen Lewis. He was born in Belfast, Ireland in 1868 to Flora Hamilton Lewis and A.J. Lewis. Clive Staples spent a great deal of his childhood enraptured by animals and tales of gallantry. He lost his mother when he was a mere 10 years old, and his education happened by way of boarding schools and tutors. Later in his life, he served in the British Army and was wounded during World War I. Once released and back home, he attended and graduated from Oxford University, where he had focused on literature and philosophy. He later joined the ranks of teacher through a fellowship at Magdalen College. He began publishing his works in the middle of the 1920s. His most important piece was Dimer, a narrative poem, which commenced when he was only 17 years old. It was finally published in 1925. During World War II, he worked as a radio broadcaster who spoke on Christianity. This effort won many converts to Christianity. His speeches are gathered in a collection entitled Mere Christianity. He was also an author of fiction and nonfiction. Even today, theologians and scholars hold his works in esteem, especially The Great Divorce and Miracles, which was written in the mid-1940s. In the 1950s, he began to publish the books that would come to make up the Chronicles of Narnia, the popular children's series we enjoy today. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe of 1950 was the first release of the series, and throughout the series, a varied biblical theme is presented. The series has retained international popularity up until the present day. In 1954, C.S. Lewis became a faculty member at Cambridge University, holding the position of literature professor. Lewis was an avid fan of classic mythology and narratives, and during his later years wrote Till We Have Faces, A Myth Retold, which featured the story of Psyche and Cupid. He wrote his own autobiography, Surprised by Joy, The Shape of My Early Life, in 1955, and married Joy Grisham in 1956. She was an American English teacher. The story of their relationship was shared in Shadowlands, which is depicted in the play and 2 films. His wife died of cancer in 1960, and he wrote about his grief, sharing his thoughts in A Grief Observed. He experienced heart trouble in 1963, causing him to resign his position at Cambridge. He subsequently died at Headington, Oxford, on November 22, 1963. As I reread the lectures for the 4th time, I have come to the explicit conclusion that I don't understand what I'm reading or exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with what I'm reading. But the internet is a helpful invention. I Googled a summary of The Abolition of Man from 2 different sites, and after reading them twice, I'm still somewhat in the dark about the subject matter of C.S. Lewis's books. However, let me start in a very elementary way. The word abolition means